In this section, we will discuss various options for logging into VMs. Connecting to virtual machines in the cloud is generally very easy. By default, Linux instances on GCP are accessed via secure shell, i.e. SSH, and require a username and an SSH key for authentication. Password authentication is disabled by default. Windows instances are accessed with Remote Desktop Protocol, or RDP, and require a username and password to authenticate. When connecting to Linux instances, the GCP console provides a built-in SSH access mechanism. To connect to an instance, simply click the SSH button in the console and an SSH terminal session will open in a new browser window. As part of the connection process, the browser window performs a HTTPS connection to Google Web Server, which in turn creates an SSH connection to the instance. SSH keys are automatically generated and propagated to the instance during this process. For this to work, the VM has to have a public IP address and a firewall rule to allow TCP port 22 traffic from Google's servers. It is also possible to connect to a Linux instance via SSH using the G-Cloud SDK. Once you have the Google Cloud SDK installed and configured, simply connect with the command gcloud compute SSH, stating an instance name and then the zone name. In this command, the instance name is the name given to the instance when it is launched. Notice you do not need to connect to or even know the VM's IP. However, it is required for the VM to have a public IP address. The public IP address is used by G-Cloud as it is running outside of the project and therefore does not have access to internal compute engine IPs. The zone name is the name of the zone where the instance is running. Running this command will automatically generate SSH keys and place a copy of them in your local home/.ssh folder. But what if you just want to SSH into the instance and do not have access to either the console or G-Cloud credentials? Don't worry, there are further options available. It is possible to connect from alternative SSH clients such as PuTTY on Windows or similar applications on Linux or Mac operating systems. To connect, remember you just need to SSH to the public IP address of the instance and provide a valid username and SSH private key to authenticate. The firewall rule for the instance still requires TCP port 22 to be allowed for the IP address range of your client. Note the SSH key to be used in this case are managed outside of GCP. You can manually create your SSH key pairs using tools like PuTTYgen or SSH KeyGen. The public key must be provided to the instance that you wish to authenticate against, but your private key never leaves your infrastructure. The public key is provided to the instance using the project metadata. The project metadata can be accessed in the GCP console from the Compute Engine dashboard. Simply select the Add Item option and upload your public key. Note, by default, all keys added to the project metadata are available to all VMs in your project. However, if you do not want your keys to be available to all VMs in the project, you can configure individual VMs to not use project-wide keys. When launching a VM, the block project-wide SSH keys options can be selected to enable this restriction. SSH keys can also be added to instance-specific metadata and will only be available to that instance. So for all of the SSH connection options discussed, require the VM instance to have a public IP address, which raises the obvious question, what if the instance does not have a public IP address? One solution to this type of situation is to use a Bastion host. To implement this solution, create a second VM with a public IP address in the same network as the instance you want to connect to. Then connect to the Bastion host and from there SSH to the private VM. Be sure to harden the Bastion host and ensure the firewall rules to limit the source IPs are able to connect to the Bastion host and then only allow SSH traffic to private instances from the Bastion. An even better practice would be to use a VPN or some other more secure form of connection, such as Cloud Interconnect, for ordinary activity. Only use SSH with the Bastion host as the maintenance avenue of the last resort. For Windows VMs, connect using RDP and log in with a username and password. The username and password can be set from the GCP console or G-Cloud. From the console, click the down arrow next to the RDP button and select Set Windows Password. For G-Cloud, the command is gcloud compute reset Windows password, followed by an instance name, and then specify the username to set the password for. To connect, simply use an RDP client and connect to the external address of the instance. You can optionally download an RDP file if you wish. Compute Engine will automatically generate a random password for your Windows instance, but once you connect, you should change this password to a custom password.